Zoning and Variance Board is now in session. I ask everyone to turn off any electric gadgets they may have, and please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have a roll call, please?
Chairman Carbon?
Present.
Mr. Crawford?
Here. Present.
Terry Bowman?
Present.
Susan Anderson? Here. Let the record show all members are present with the exception of Member Hutmaker.
Thank you. We have a quorum, so let us proceed. The first item on the agenda is any comments or proposals concerning the proposed agenda. I have one, and that is to add a review and approval of the minutes of the last session, and I'll do that now. Are there any comments from any members of the board concerning the minutes from the last session? Do we hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Are there any comments from the public regarding the agenda? Any additions or items you'd like to see added? I see none. Let's turn to the first of the two agenda items we have, which is a request for a variance at 131 Passage Island. Do we have a representative for the applicant? Make sure that's on, please.
There we go. Hi, good morning. I'm Sandra Rennick from the law firm of Gould Cooksey Fennell on behalf of the owner, the Madsons. We submitted a variance request. The property is a residential property with required setbacks of 12.5 and 25 on the front and 30 at the rear. We have two encroachments, one on the northwest side yard setback of 0.32 feet and into the southwest front yard setback by 1.67 feet. The house has been in existence since 1994 when it was built by the developer. It has changed hands twice, but this is the first time such an encroachment has been caught. We submitted a survey, and I would request the variance on behalf of the owners as a result of an undue hardship.
My understanding is that the footprint has not changed since it was constructed. Is that right?
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions or comments on the board? Any comments from the public?
I did have a question, sorry. What brought this encroachment to your attention, and what is the purpose of the of seeking the variance now?
Sure. So the property became under contract and was ready for sale. The sale has been postponed until which time we can correct this determined defect, if you will. But we did have it change hands twice. It never was caught in the past, but we looked at the surveyor's notes and determined that they were correct and that the best course of action was to seek this corrective variance.
Okay. Yeah. Could I ask a question of Pete, I guess? With this, if this variance is granted, it would be only for the existing encroachment, and so any future development would not be able to take advantage of like the encroachment. Is that correct?
Generally speaking, yes, and that would be applicable to any variances. So the idea is, and let me just clarify, and Ms. Rennick said there are two distances. One is under a foot, and that can be administratively approved. The reason we're here is because of the one that's over a foot but under 3 feet. That will be up to your approval. But what would happen is, if it's approved today, that would be the final part. It doesn't need to go to the town council for any further approval. It would be confirmed at 1.37 feet.
Oh, no, 1.67.
Thank you, 1.67 feet. And so that specific side at that distance will be what we have now with the building department going forward. And if somebody were to try to add another foot, it would require a variance. So it would have to stay within that footprint. That's absolutely correct.
Okay. Any other board questions or comments? Any questions from the public? Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve as applied for.
Any second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. You have your variance, as Mr. Sweeney mentioned, it's within a 3-foot application, and therefore this board has the authority to grant it. You should get a letter in a few days.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Let's look at the second application from Johns Island relative to a communication tower in a district zoned R2A. Is there a representative for the applicant?
Good morning. I'm John Blum, engineer with LJA Engineering, representing the applicant. Also have Michael Korpar with Johns Island. And we're here today to request a variance for the relocation of an existing communications tower. The tower is located at their administration facility on 1 Turtle Beach Road. To the best of our knowledge, we couldn't totally confirm, but we think the original tower was built sometime in the 90s, and it had a 60-foot height at that time. The new tower, which is being relocated 4.8 feet away from the existing tower, and has been shortened to a height of 45 feet. And we provided a site plan. On the site plan itself, we met all the conditions of the code. We've demonstrated what the fall zone is for that tower, being 45 feet. And it is, that radius is shown on the site plan, and it's all within the confines of the administration property. So I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Actually, I found the application somewhat confusing for a variety of reasons, but let me see if I can clarify some of them.
Sure.
The application says the site is at 1 Turtle Beach Road. When I Google that, I got a residence deep in the Johns Island development. Is that the correct address?
Because we don't allow, Mike Korpar, General Manager of Johns Island, because we don't allow Google Maps and all that to ride our property, Google Maps, any application that gives you directions gives you the wrong address. It is 1 Turtle Beach Road. It takes you over to Coquille is where it takes you.
I've learned that when I try to get driving instructions, yes.
Yes. But yes, it is the building to the right as you enter the South Oceanside Gate. And that is the correct address.
There's also, the application also stated that you were looking to relocate the tower, but if I look at the site plan, you seem to be at the exact same, or virtually the exact same location.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's less than 5 feet. I think we measured at survey 4.8 feet of relocation.
From where the current tower is?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And the new tower will be a monopole tower?
Correct. Yeah, the old one, like I said, was 60 feet high. I had the guy wires. This one's a monopole without guy wires.
The only other concern I have is the fall radius. And with respect to the structures, I understand those are Johns Island structures, but I'm also concerned with the safety of personnel. And that's a working area. There's going to be a lot of people moving about there. And is there a concern with the safety of personnel working in that area? And given that, what alternative locations were considered for this tower?
Well, I mean, the tower's been engineered, and it's been engineered to current wind load requirements. So as far as the structural stability of the tower, we meet the rules of that. As far as another location, I don't know, Mike, if you can respond to, but I meant this one is definitely, it's part of the maintenance facility. There are no residents or houses within that area or that fall zone. So, and because we're replacing one that was already pre-existing, it just seemed to be the perfect fit for the location.
No alternative location was considered because of the location of the tower. It has to do with our safety of our community, with radio communications for the security department, as well as cameras, and we also use it for our water. We sell irrigation water to the community, so it's also used as the receiving tower on that. If it were to fall, I mean, they're talking about, they put, I don't know, you can tell the base, I don't know what the base on this thing is, but it If it were to fall, it'd either fall in the garage, it would fall on a gas pump, or it would fall on a car in a parking lot. But in the area that it's in, employees do not work in that area very often.
What about something falling off it? I mean, that's a risk as well.
Well, we have things on there very well secured, and we check those things on a biannual basis. We just have a couple little antennas on there. It's nothing heavy. If they were to fall, I could only see them falling in a radius of the tower, maybe 5 to 10 feet at the most.
Yeah, the concern I had is more with personnel in the area, because
Right.
you're gonna have a lot of workers coming and going there.
Yeah, in that area, there's not a lot of workers. It's at the very end. We just built a new garage facility, and it's at the very south end of the garage facility, and that's pretty much a storage area. Okay. It is not a functioning working area.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, I have one. I noticed that on that current tower, there's 2 instruments. Are they going to be the same instruments that go up, or are you going to add?
No, same.
Same thing.
We do not plan on adding anything to the tower.
Okay.
Matter of fact, in the shorter tower, we used to have a weather station up on the top of the tower for hurricane insurance purposes. We will not be reinstalling that. This is just going to be for the water management company and cameras and security's radio system. That's it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, I have a question that's more procedural and technical in that this is in an R2A zone, and as your application acknowledges, towers are not allowed in R2A zones. So my initial question is, what is the history of the existing tower? How did that get approved? And yeah, so that's my first question, and then I have follow-ups.
The history, as far as I can tell you, if you know anything about Johns Island, I've been there 10 years. I have a maintenance supervisor who's been there 25 years. The tower's been there since he's been there. In the history of Johns Island, I hate to say it, they beg for forgiveness later. I don't know if this tower was ever permitted to begin with. I don't think it was, and that's why we're at this point where we are today, is because we wanted to move it as per what we're asking for. Now we figured out it wasn't permitted. We talked to Fred and said we need to get this permitted and approved.
Right. So in my short time on this board, I have, I share your observation, and I don't, my concern on this one is, I think, a matter of authority. If it wasn't permitted, there's no grandfathering in, as far as I can see. There's no legal basis that I understand for this board to grant a variance, because it's really a land use issue and not a variance issue. This isn't a matter of where you're putting the tower. It's a matter of putting something in a zone that is specifically prohibited in that zone. And from my understanding, that is a land use issue that this board does not have the authority to grant, like an excuse for. So that's my understanding, and if you have a response to that, I would be, I understand why you are asking for this new tower, but I'm not sure that we have the authority to grant your request.
My response to that would be, and maybe it's a whole zoning and land use map revision that might be needed. I'm not sure, I'm not going there, but the administration complex, the maintenance facility that was just remodeled and expanded is in that same zoning district as well, and was just recently approved as a site plan. So I understand there's different uses between that maintenance facility and the tower, but it's not a residential use in that R2 zoning. So it's kind of a pre-existing precedent that's been set on, I guess is where I'm going.
Mr. Sweeney.
Mr. Chair.
You're going to get called in on this.
Sure. I think the first question is whether or not the variance itself is necessary given some of the definitions and what communication towers are. So looking at that Section 161.11, siting of communication towers and antennas. And if I may, Mr. Chair, Board, ask questions of the applicant. Mr. Blum, Mr. Corpart, this structure will not enable communications outside of the Johns Island community.
That's correct.
There will be no placement of third-party vendors such as a mobile service provider like AT&T or Verizon. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The reason why I asked that is under section sub B1, compliance with applicable federal regulations, communication towers and communication antennas must comply with all applicable FAA and FCC regulations. I don't, and again, I should ask for the record, have you been required to submit any application to either the FCC or the FAA?
No, we have not.
And do you expect that you will be required to?
No.
Were you ever required to with the prior iteration of this tower?
No, we weren't.
The reason why I suggest that is that arguably this isn't a communications tower, and that's actually reinforced when you look at the next subsection, which is titled height of tower. Shall not exceed 50 feet in height, including antenna, when freestanding. It's not, based on the application. It then follows in the second sentence, among the considerations of the town shall be the quality of cellular service, the co-location of service providers on one tower, camouflage considerations, and projected future needs for reasonable coverage within the town. These considerations are listed herein are meant to be illustrative only, and all of the provisions set forth in this section shall be considered and applied as the facts warrant. Again, I'm not 100% sure this falls within the definition of a communications tower. Now, in an abundance of caution, as you heard the applicant say, they brought this to the building official. The building official, we don't have really any other of these in the entirety of the town. Is that correct, Mr. Held?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. So, again, given the uniqueness of it, Mr. Chair, Board, it was brought here. I do think it's appropriate for this board to evaluate, particularly the fall radius, as our chairman was just talking about, and they certified, because that is a question that makes that clear. But as far as being outside and incompatible with the zoning district, I'm not sure it applies, because I'm not sure it's a use that is prohibited in that sense. Again, it's certainly not regulated by the FCC or the FAA. It's not providing communications to any third-party vendors. And again, going back to the history of the town, Mr. Chair, other members of the board, this facility that's located just west of us here took many years. There was no provisions in the code of the town. So a lot of this was designed with that kind of idea in place. And again, that's why you see all the monopole idea communication towers, where they would be allowed, what districts they would be allowed in. So I think appropriately, it's more akin to a structure, I think. Again, it continues to talk about whether or not, as you continue through here, whether this is going to be communication, what it would be doing for maintenance. I think it's a structure, and for that reason, as long as it would meet that, it would be appropriate. I think, again, this board is an advisory board in most capacities, so it makes sense to bring things like this, and depending on the purview. But I respect what you're saying, and I think you're right. If it were applicable, it would certainly fit right within that prohibition. I do agree with what you're saying.
Let me just ask one clarification. You said that it's a communication tower, and the water company was going to be using it?
Yes, we sell irrigation water to the entire community.
Okay.
And we have automatic, if you're familiar with utilities, all the water meters in the ground are sent to us electronically, so we can bill the residents for the amount of water they use. And there's a little antenna on that tower that receives that signal.
Okay, thank you.
Have you ever asked the FCC or any governmental organization if you need permission for this tower or to comply with anything?
Not for the tower. We do have an FCC license for communication, just a license to use a frequency. But it has nothing to do with the tower. It just has a radio license that we can use a certain frequency designated by them to communicate with.
Right, but you've never asked whether this tower needs to comply. So the fact that it hasn't been required to comply doesn't necessarily mean that it isn't one that would be required to comply, because as you just said, sometimes you ask for forgiveness rather than permission.
Spending my past 10 years
So,
fixing
right,
problems.
Right, so all I'm saying is, I'm not sure, I understand Mr. Sweeney's analysis of this, but I think I don't agree with Mr. Sweeney's analysis, because if it were true, then I would be able to put a tower on my property for my own use, if I have enough space, and I probably would, that it wouldn't hit anything. And I don't think I don't think that that's true.
Actually, it is true. It is true. And in fact, there's a section in here that specifically talks about being able, it specifically excludes anybody utilizing essentially ham radio. If you'll just give me 1 second, it's very clear that it says that it does not apply to individuals that are utilizing essentially non-commercial radios. Please give me just 1 second and I'll find it.
But Mr. Sweeney, that doesn't mean you can put a tower up for that ham radio. Anybody can use a ham radio without a 45-foot tower.
But you would be allowed to put up an antenna that would reach 35, 40, even arguably up to 50 feet. I mean,
I'm not, anybody, I'm not sure that would, that would be allowed, and that that this town would allow that for,
Yep.
everybody have have poles, but.
Yes, thank you. It was in the definitional section. Thank you. It is under 160.001, and it talks about communication. And yes, if I may, very quickly. A tower greater than 35 feet in height, including antenna that supports communication, transmission, or receiving equipment. The term communication tower shall not include amateur radio operators' equipment licensed by the FCC. No tower shall exceed 50 feet in height, including antenna when freestanding, or 40% of the building height when placed on top of buildings, except as provided in 161.17. So again, the very clear directive here is that it would not apply in that circumstance. I think most importantly is that going through this, the key to it is, if it's being built, the fall radius, and again, there's been significant questions about that, whether or not this board believes that that's been met, quite frankly. The monopole issue is not an issue anymore. We've resolved that.
I understand what you're saying, but my reading of that, of how you just read it, is if it is licensed, it's exempt. But you're twisting it so that if it's not licensed, it doesn't have to be licensed, and therefore it's exempt. So I just disagree with your interpretation of the regulations here. I don't believe we have the authority to grant this. That's my view, but I'm not sure our discussion has changed my view on that. I mean, again, I understand why Johns Island would like to upgrade its communications, but the process and the town's codes and ordinances should, in my view, be followed and more closely by all community residents.
Just to be clear, we're not upgrading anything. We just want to move the tower 4 feet because of our new structure. It's going to have the same communications that we have on it. Matter of fact, it's going to have a little less, because that one set, when it was 60 feet tall, we had a weather station on it. We're not putting that on there. Otherwise, the same radio receiver, the same receiver for the water meters, and the same receiver for the cameras, none of that's going to change. It's the exact same thing. We're not upgrading anything.
Well, in fact, you're upgrading from a lattice design to a monopole design, where they can get more robust structure. The code clearly prefers that a new tower be installed on a roof. Was any consideration given to that? I think that would improve the concern with the fall radius.
Not that I'm aware of, I mean, yeah. I don't believe so.
We did not.
Yeah.
Like I said, we built the building first, and then we wanted to move the tower because of the parameter of it to the building. And that's when we came out to find from out Mr. Hold that this tower was never permanent. So we're trying to do the right thing in using this and getting it on paper, getting it the right thing so that we can just move it. It was never considered to put it on the building. And I don't know if our building structure, I'm not an architect or an engineer of any kind, could handle a tower up there. It would take, basically it would take, what, a 15-foot section off of the tower? But we'd still be looking at the same height.
Yeah, same height.
And where the tower is going to be located, it would be no less of a danger to staff.
Well,
it might be more danger to staff because now it's going to fall over and going in and out of the garage.
Under the code, if it was mounted on a roof, it has to be a minimum 10 feet from the edge of the roof. So right there, you eliminate 10-foot fall radius exposure.
Okay, well, if we put it on the peak of the roof, and if it was fall to the garage side of the roof and it's 40, whatever tall, it's still going to fall into the more of the work area than it would currently now.
Right. Any other questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the public? Please step up, please. Tell us your name and who you represent.
My name is Kim Burton. I live at 106 Hidden Oak Drive, and I am the president of a board at Bermuda Bay. This enhanced maintenance facility is directly adjacent to the main entrance to our oceanside properties. It was sold initially as an administrative building. It's far from that. There is so much truck traffic, work on equipment that's going on a daily basis. It makes it difficult for us to exit that side of our property, and has become a little bit of a problem when our residents are coming across A1A to use our beach facilities, whether walking or by bicycle. And I'm concerned that any tower that might be in that area could be a fall risk to those people during a storm, and you never know where things are going to end up. We just recently had the tornado down the street, and who knows where something like this could end up. The building enlargement that was approved initially removed a lot of the foliage that was there, and while things have been planted, they're sporadic and they would never totally mask that facility from our entrance despite our wall. And the tower today is really an eyesore, and even a monopole tower would be completely visible to our residents. We found no other tower anywhere in Indian River Shores similar to this, whether it's a monopole or a lattice tower. In fact, when the cell tower here went through an extensive discussion to get that approved, the tower that was on the emergency services building was removed as a result of that, and alternate methods for providing that transmission were resolved. And I don't see why Johns Island couldn't look at some of those other alternatives. Obviously, the existing tower was issued without a permit, and any further construction to that should have the proper permit process to go along with it. But the tower is an eyesore. It's visible. The one that's there now is totally visible on A1A, but even a monopole would be visible to all of our residents. And our residents feel that our property is being disvalued by this commercial feeling function that's happening at this building that we thought was never intended. It was supposed to be an administrative building. There are trucks and cars there parked all the time, equipment being worked on all the time. And frankly, we feel that in an R2A zone, which is similar to our property, that no tower should be allowed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Todd Thompson. I'm the general contractor that Johns Island asked to come help out with the tower and pull the permit for the tower and the relocation of it. And I've been working in Johns Island on a lot of their security stuff since I was 16 years old. And Star Communications, Michael Gerpart, was the original contractor that put the tower up over 30 years ago. Now, in 30 years, the base had rusted out and had been replaced. He's pretty sure, in my speakings with him, that it was permitted back when it was put in originally, but who's going to find the archive files 30 years ago? He's been digging around trying to find his. He's long since sold the company and retired. He actually sold the company to me. And I don't have any of those old documents. So he's thinking that the tower was permitted. So the relocation of the tower, of a permitted tower, is possibly here in effect, but we don't have the documentation. We can't find microfilm to prove it. That being said, the FCC has been checked to make sure that the tower did not fall within a permit for their guidelines, and it is exempt from the tower manufacturer's rep who reaches out and does all the homework before they give us the quote for the towers. So that's been cleared. I guess the other concern you're having regarding the fall radius. Fall radius is something to consider when there's a storm, right? And if there's a storm that's going to create an issue with the fall radius of this tower, there's not going to be any personnel around the tower. There's not going to be anybody out there watching the tower come down on their head because they're going to be running from the storm. That's just my observation. I've been around these towers my entire life. I've climbed to the top of them, not willingly, but as duty called. And I've sat there and swayed on a 70-foot tower with no guide wires, and it hasn't fallen. But in the event of a storm, hurricane, 30 years of history goes by, and we've had hurricanes, one every 3-4 years maybe. We just had a tornado that blew here with at least 150-mile-an-hour gust winds that blew through Johns Island. Tower still stayed in place. So just kind of maybe a little relief on your worries with the fall radius.
Is there any reason the tower can't be located elsewhere within Johns Island?
Well, I don't know. That would kind of be a question for you guys if you have a specific area and maybe the bandwidth of the antenna, the radios that you use for the water system.
Yeah, we don't have any other property we can put it on. We don't own any other property within Johns Island to put that on. We own the building there and where One Turtle Beach Road is, and we have our gates, but I'm sure if we want to put a tower on top of one of our gates, I'm sure the community wouldn't like that either, because now you're really out in the forefront. The tower is guarded from A1A with foliage. Yes, we removed the landscaping from Bermuda Bay. We put all new landscaping in. Yes, it's going to take a couple years for that landscaping to come in and block their view again. But we really don't have any other spot. We don't own any other property that we could put that tower on.
There is a service area up towards the clubhouse.
That is the club property. Club property and Johns Island Property Association are two separate entities. We have nothing to do with one another.
Okay.
So we don't own it. They own all their own, we own ours. And we just basically own that area and where the gates are.
I mean, the parking garage that was recently approved by the council, is that club property?
Yes, that is club property.
On the other side of A1A?
That is club property.
So when that was before us, there seemed to be an awful lot of communication and cooperation between the two entities. Is there, since that building is already pretty tall, has there been any consideration of putting the antenna portion on the top of the parking garage, which also seems fairly central to everywhere where you need to communicate?
No consideration was given, and just to be clear, JIPWA, or Johns Island Property Association, was not involved at all in that garage process. That was totally the club. It was their property, and we weren't. All we were told is they're building a parking garage, and you all approved it, and that's all we were told. We were not even in the discussions with that garage. That was all Johns Island Club. I mean, our president wrote a letter, he had no objection to the garage based on the height. That was the only thing we got involved in. But other than that, we had nothing to do with the building it. Antennas, and it's a prefab garage. I don't know how easy it would be to put an antenna on that or not. I don't know. We have not asked.
There'd be a lot of structural components needed to be able to attach an antenna that sways into something on the foundation like that.
I'm sorry, sir, can you speak into the
There'd be some
microphone?
structural issues. I'm not a structural engineer, but I've been in the business for 30 years, and there'd be some structural issues that the garage would have to be beefed up in order to handle the tower being attached to it. That's why it's embedded in, a cement foundation for its support. And it's weighted for X amount of square footage of cement based on the height of the tower to support the swaying and the issues of what may come down the road with the storm.
Well, right, but the tower wouldn't be put on the garage. It's the antenna that's on top of the tower is, my understanding, the important part of the tower, and you need to raise it above everything for the communication. So the antenna part just needs to be high enough. Doesn't have to have the tower on top of the garage. It just needs to have the antenna on top of, like a higher.
Part of our infrastructure too, that it's easy to say, let's move a tower a mile down the road. But the way, we have several communication devices around the property that are all aimed and set to shoot at that corner of our One Turtle Beach Road. There'd be a lot of infrastructure changes that would have to be put in place. Not saying it can't be done, I'm just saying put in place. And we would have to get permission from the club to do that. And we try to, believe it or not, we try to, anything they do, we don't want to do anything on their property, and we don't want them doing anything on our property. Because we fought, just a little point of reference how we fight the club. They wanted to buy it, when we talked about renovating our building, they wanted to buy it and put pickleball courts there. And we told them no. We're just going to renovate our building and make it bigger. And just to be clear on her complaint about all the new work that's going on by the garages, we've had our maintenance garage go on there for 50 years. They've been doing work on vehicles, construction, everything around that area. Just because we built a new, more efficient garage, it's the same work that's been going on for over 50 years.
Can I ask a question? You're going to have a communication device on top of the tower, monopole. What is the radius of that? Is it for local, or does it go across all of JI?
It goes all across the JI. It bounces. We have several little antennas around the property that you can't see. They're smaller, but it pretty much shoots out over the radius of John's Island.
So it's a mesh technology where you have, like the mother here and then a bunch of ones, and they all communicate.
Yeah. Correct. To the best of my knowledge. I'm not a technician on that, but to the best of my knowledge, that's the way I understand it works.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Any other comments from the public? Do I have a motion?
My motion would be to deny this request for a variance on procedural grounds, and that the request is one that needs to be more directed toward land use issues.
Any second? Any other motion? May I pass the gavel?
Yes.
I pass the gavel, and I make a motion to deny the application for the variance. Any second?
I second that motion.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
We're going to need a roll call vote. I can't tell.
Deny the request for variance, which was made by Mr. Carbon, was seconded by Ms. Bowman. Can I have a vote, please? Mr. Crawford?
I guess I'll deny.
But
So
hang
vote
on,
in favor?
let's be clear what are you voting in favor of the motion or not?
No, I'm not. voting in favor of the motion as described by.
You're voting in favor to deny the request for variance.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Carbon?
Aye.
Ms. Bowman? Ms. Anderson? Let the record show the motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you.
For the applicant's benefit, you should know that, as Mr. Sweeney mentioned earlier, this board's authority is to not finally determine your application, but to make a recommendation to the town council. So our recommendation will go to the council at the next scheduled hearing. You can present again. You may not get a motion today, but they have our recommendation.
And in light of that, thank you, Mr. Carbon, that's correct. So in light of that, this would be likely going, and I'll defer to Mr. Harpring, to the next meeting this month.
Yes, that's the 28th, May 28th. This will be presented to Town Council. It'll be on agenda for discussion. So we'll see it on May 28th, the Town Council meeting, 9 a.m.
All right.
I'm on the agenda with staff updates, so I'm not quite sure what we're addressing.
Mr. Chair, if I may? We had an item come up. If I just give you a very brief background, let me get to the end first. I'm going to be asking to see if there is a quorum on May 27th for a meeting of this body sitting as the local planning agency, the LPA, for purposes of making a review and recommendation to Town Council, who will be meeting the following day on the 28th. And I'm sorry. And that's a Wednesday or Tuesday, but nonetheless, we're looking at the 27th. Brief background, the town had previously gone through the process of our evaluation and appraisal report and review for our comprehensive plan. We were engaged in that last year. However, the legislature passed Senate Bill 180. Part of Senate Bill 180 had a lot of directives to counties and municipalities like ours relative to their comprehensive plans, land planning, land development, and so on. As a result, though we had an updated comprehensive plan prepared and ready to go, we had to pull that back and reevaluate it and look at the language again in light of Senate Bill 180. We've done that. And the process is that the local planning agency, this group sitting as the LPA, reviews the comprehensive plan changes and evaluates it and makes recommendations to the town council. That being said, the changes are as a result of both our periodic review through our evaluation and appraisal report review of our comprehensive plan, because laws change every year, and more specifically as to Senate Bill 180, because it was very direct as to the types of things that we had to make sure we weren't doing that were either burdensome or restrictive or so on. So that's a long way of saying we're trying to get a quorum because we have time frames, and those time frames were not items related to the town, but they were related to the legislature and the changes and the reviews that we have to undergo for the comprehensive plans. So what I'd like to do is ask if we would have a quorum for an LPA meeting on May 27th for purposes of reviewing the draft changes to the comprehensive plan. We'll get that out to you this week. It's not substantive, and you'll see there's a lot more, it looks a little more intimidating because it's in legislative format than it actually is in terms of the changes. There's nothing of substance. If anything, the changes relate to, I think the best way I can put it is a softening of language in the comprehensive plan, or a removal of certain directives that were not subject to review or oversight or legislation by the municipality as a result of what Senate Bill 180 said. It removed a lot, Senate Bill 180 removed a lot of restrictive language that might otherwise be in the comprehensive plans. So when we send it out to you, and I could even go out this afternoon or tomorrow, you'll see that it's pretty straightforward, and we're not looking to do anything nuanced or complex in terms of fundamental changes in the town's comprehensive plan. frankly, our goal is to be statutorily compliant with the provisions of 180, which is why we're here. So with that, my question is whether or not there could be a quorum, or at least 3 of the people that we have here now on the 27th for a meeting of the local planning agency.
Speaking for myself, Jim, unfortunately, I won't be here those days.
And I won't either.
Okay.
I will be here, barely.
Well, we'll find out if Mr. Hutmaker is running. We know he's running somewhere. Janice? Was available on the 27th. Okay. We'll firm all that up within a day or two. We'll get out an agenda and an agenda item and a staff report and all the information. We'll send that to everyone for their review. And as always, if you have comments, you can email me directly. But I very much appreciate those that are able to be here and obviously understand this is a last minute thing. And those that have plans otherwise, we're appreciative of that as well. Pete, anything else on that?
All I wanted to add is for any individual that is not going to be here in reviewing it, if you do have comments, red lines, suggestions, edits, please just directly send them to Mr. Harpring. That way they don't go back to the group and it doesn't foster communication. What would happen is those comments will be presented along with whoever's here physically. I know it's hard to digest, but we don't want to have the open door back and forth. These are my comments, and somebody says, those are great comments. So that would be only my recommendation. Thank you.
I have one question. Some time ago, this board voted to recommend to the town council that with respect to the application for variance, that notice be required to be given to adjacent properties. And has anything along those lines been incorporated into the new code?
That's not, from a staff perspective, through discussions, I've not been directed by council to do so, or to prepare something like that. Certainly, as part of these minutes, council gets the minutes, and we can certainly present that. And I know that it was a bit of an anomaly over time because the only essentially neighbor notification was exclusively as to docks, which are very, very limited, in town, as we know. So that's something that we'll make sure we make note of, and I'll address, because we do have some, ordinance things that we always look to tighten up over the course of the year.
Any other updates that we should talk about?
I have nothing else. I'll defer to Mr. Sweeney or others.
Just had a question with respect to, there's apparently a town meeting, a workshop coming up on the pickup truck ordinance. Is that going to be something that comes before this board for consideration?
In brief, I don't know. The meeting itself is a result of staff and others getting inquiries about the current status of the ordinance. So as a result, we schedule a meeting to basically get input in a very broad sense from everyone. The idea is that we'll publish or notify everybody, at the meeting and otherwise. This is what the town ordinance currently requires or outlines. Thereafter, we'll ask for input if there are anyone that has any suggested changes about that based on whatever factors they want to suggest. And then at that point in time, we'll take all of that input and bring it to the town council at the May 28th meeting, because our community meeting, I believe, is the 19th. So at the 28th, we will report to the town council. That meeting itself, since it's going to be held here, will have minutes. It'll be recorded. Council will be able to see, all of the input. So we will really just be delivering that information to the council for their determination. It'll be up to them at May to give staff direction, one way or the other. Do something, do nothing, do something within these parameters or otherwise. So that's sort of the process, as it were, relative to that issue. That's all I have.
Are there any comments from the public? Yep.
So I just have a question, based on your recommendation. Before we go down a rabbit hole and spend all this money and design the tower possibly on the building, still gonna be a fall radius, still gonna be this, still gonna be that. Is this group open to us doing that? Because it's still in the R2A or RA2 zone, it's still in a residential area. I don't want to spend a whole bunch of money with engineers and all this if you guys are going to say, oh no, it's still in a residential area. Sorry.
Just as it is a difficult exercise for you to go through, because we don't know exactly what you're proposing, and we need something, at least a preliminary.
Well, basically, I'm just saying, the big argument I heard here was the RA2 zone.
Right.
It's in a residential, don't want the tower there, even though Mr. Sweeney pointed out in the town ordinances, it's permitted. And as she pointed out, we just don't think that should happen. She doesn't agree with the town ordinance. My question is, I'm literally talking about moving the tower 15 feet over onto the roof of the maintenance building in the same area. And everything I've heard from here, I don't want to go down that path if it's just going to come back and say, oh no, you're still in the residential area, we're not going to approve it.
Let me suggest to you, and this is only a suggestion, it's
Yeah,
not an
yeah.
official recommendation or
Sure,
anything,
sure.
but you're going to go through the exercise with the town council, I imagine.
Correct.
And after that, I think you have to make a decision.
Sure. I'm just trying to work with you all. I want to make sure,
Understood.
We're just trying to bring everything to compliance and.
And we're not looking to be difficult or uncooperative either, but there is a code, and it's there for a reason. And my biggest concern, as I expressed, I think, is the safety of personnel in the area.
Yes.
And it's a working area, there's going to be a lot of people running around, and the code is there, I think, in large part to protect those people.
Okay, that's fine.
And that's, if you were to move the tower onto the roof, which I believe is what the code calls for in the first instance, it would certainly ameliorate that concern.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
And I would like to clarify something, because I understand you're disappointed that your variance was declined, but I think you mischaracterized both what Mr. Sweeney said and my position. Mr. Sweeney did not give a definitive legal opinion about what the variance said. He said a number of times he's not sure whether it applies or it would require a different zoning or not. It's not Mr. Sweeney's burden, it is the applicant's burden to show that the variance is allowed and that we have the authority to grant it. My view is that I don't believe we have the authority to grant this variance. I empathize with your need for the tower, but the purpose of my duty on this board is to apply the rules, and that's how I see it. And what I haven't received any information from the applicant that convinces me otherwise. So
that's fine. Actually, you have to do your due diligence. I respect that.
Right. So I don't. You said I disagree with the town ordinance. That is not correct, actually. I'm enforcing the town ordinance as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are adjourned.